This is Heather Scalf. Today is July 14th, 2015, and I'm interviewing Amy Roe for the second time. This interview is taking place at the University of Texas at Arlington Central Library in Arlington, Texas. The interview is sponsored by the College of Liberal Arts and is part of the Maverick Veterans Voices Project. Welcome, Mrs. Roe.
Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about where you were both from originally?
Yes, I was born and grew up in the Dallas area, and Bill spent his early years in the Piney Woods of East Texas. And in August of 1950, his grandparents moved next door to my family in just a quiet, small suburb of Dallas. And this is how we first met as children. So it was quite natural that we became playmates.
And how old were you?
I was 8 and Bill was 10.
Wow, very nice. Mm-hmm. So did he participate in ROTC in high school?
He did, originally in Forest Avenue High School. He was in junior ROTC there. And I can remember when he had bought his first ROTC uniform. He was very proud to show that to me. And after a couple of years at Forest, we all went to Crozier Tech in our Crozier Technical High School, where he finished his last couple of high school years. And his senior year in high school, he was the cadet commander of the Corps there.
So why did he choose to attend what was at that time Arlington State College?
Well, it was, he lived with his grandparents, so it was important for him to be able to go home on weekends. And so it was close. It was, just a nice drive away. And I think maybe secondary to that was that we were dating at the time, and we wanted to be able to also, see one another on weekends. So it just really fit with him. And he was also on the rifle team at Arlington State.
So what did he study while he was here?
He majored in civil engineering. He got a civil engineering degree. Yes.
And did you come here to go to school? How did you?
Well, actually, I did not attend college. A lot of events in my family kind of, set that in motion. I had lost my mother to an aneurysm when I was only 16. And so my dad was left with, the two younger, myself and my sister at home. Mm-hmm. And Bill had said to me, we were dating then, and he said, this is probably, he said, and I was working so that I could save money. After I finished high school, I worked so that we could get married. And he said to me, I guess he didn't feel that at that time that I needed the college education. He said that I wouldn't have to work, after we married. And actually, the only time that I did was when it was convenient and I really wanted to. Mm-hmm.
So you married while he was here at school?
Yes, between his sophomore and junior year in college, we married on the 30th of July, 1960.
And where did you live? Here in Arlington?
No, we actually had a little duplex in Oak Cliff. And this way it was convenient to the bus line because I worked in Dallas. And it was convenient for me to take the bus and to get to work and back again. Mm-hmm. This way he had the car. He was, he needed the car to be more flexible with his schedule. And so that worked out really well. In fact, I remember one little story I'll never forget at that duplex. A young couple lived next door to us. They had a little boy who was about 5 years old. And when I arrived home from work, walking up to the duplex, the little boy announced to me, "Your daddy's home." And I thought that was so sweet. He I guess, thinking of his own dad coming home from work. Mm-hmm. And Bill had already arrived back from school, that he announced to me that my daddy was home.
Mm-hmm. So he was in ROTC and here at Arlington State College with the intention of joining the military, and this was the early 60s. So what were your thoughts about his decision to join the military?
Well, I had actually lived in the same house until we married. And I had a bit of adventurous streak in me, I think. And what I thought about was being able to travel and see different places. And in fact, on our honeymoon, I went to places in Texas I'd never been. Austin, the capital, Houston, Galveston, San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
I had not been to those cities until we married and decided to just, take our honeymoon by going to the cities in Texas. So I was all for him being in the military. I knew that's what he wanted, and he had been looking forward to.
So when he was commissioned as a second lieutenant, he went into which branch?
The Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Were there any instructors or professors here who significantly influenced him or guided him, in his decision to go into civil engineering and then in engineering in the Army?
Well, I think he was kind of prone as a kid to like to build things, but I'm sure that that there is, and I can't think of the individual's name, that really maybe steered him in that direction also.
Mm-hmm.
But his grandfather on his mother's side was a carpenter, and I think even though Bill was really never around them much, since they lived in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, that he just liked to build things, and it just seemed to be natural,
Mm-hmm.
a way to go for him.
So tell us about his first days in the service. After he graduates, he gets his commission. What happens next?
Okay, he attended his EOBC class at Fort Belvoir, and since our second child, a daughter, had just been born 2 weeks after he received his commission, I stayed back in Dallas with my father, and in June of 1963, we our first tour was in Germany, 3 years in Germany, and that was really a big change, and even though I took two small children, both of our children were small or young,
Mm-hmm.
that this was really a very enjoyable time for us. And
How did you get the family to Germany? Did you fly?
yes, we did. We flew to Germany, flew from Dallas, Love Field to Philadelphia, and went on a military flight then on to Frankfurt, Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And we were stationed at what's referred to as K-Town, Kaiserslautern, and south of Frankfurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And coming back, though, we weren't in any big hurry to come back. And so we actually came back by ship, the USS Navy, a Geiger. I'll never forget the name, the Geiger, the name of the troop ship. And that was an adventure in itself. 9 days to cross the North Atlantic. I don't know when they stopped doing that, but
With
it was a good
a
idea.
toddler and a 4-year-old?
Yes, 2 children, under 5.
Wow.
Yes.
Very interesting. So what was his next assignment after Germany?
He went to Fort Belvoir in Virginia,
Mhm.
and actually at the end of 1966, actually had a break in service. So
Okay. And what did he do during that break in service?
he worked at Cameron Station for it was a government position as a civil engineer at Cameron Station in Alexandria, Virginia. And of all the projects that he worked on there, I think the one most memorable was at the time that he began to work there, a fellow employee there in his office left a newspaper on his desk with the words at the top, "Get to work," because there was an article about the parking lot across the street from the PX. And every time they had least bit of rain, that the soil kept sloughing off and running across the sidewalk into the street. And no one could seem to find a solution to that. So Bill got to work. He found the solution. And as far as I know, that wall stayed there. It helped all of the, it did the job and was still there at the time that this property was turned over for civilian use.
That's quite a legacy there. So he transitioned at some point from civil engineer in the Corps of Engineers to foreign area officer. Can you tell us when that happened?
Yes, later on in his Army career, they needed to pick an alternate specialty, and he was always good with languages. And so it was just natural for him to, for FAO to be his alternate specialty. And in fact, they sent him to language school at DLI, the Defense Language Institute, at the Presidio of Monterey in California. And he studied a year of Korean. And then we lived in the quarters at Fort Ord. So we actually then had an accompanied tour to Korea after he completed the language school.
So what did you think about living in Korea? There are not a lot of families that have gotten to do that.
Yes, I really, enjoyed living there and the culture. And actually, I also worked while we were there as I worked for 2 or 3 companies, a few hours a week at each one, working with their employees, teaching conversational English. They were going to send these employees to the States for business, and they wanted their employees to practice their English. So I found that very interesting and rewarding for me, and I just actually, enjoyed it a lot. And
were there, during your time in Korea, that was what years?
That was 19, let me see, would have been in the late 70s. We went in about 78 or 79 and came back in 80. That was at a critical time also for the Korean people, because while we were there, their president was assassinated by one of his bodyguards. So even though they had the curfew already in place when we went there, it was pretty much, the country seemed like it was almost sealed off for a time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was something different that we witnessed. It's not often that someone can look out their windows and see, because we lived in a apartment building downtown on the 20th floor of, I think, 24, 25-story building. And the first few months we were there, because quarters were not available till later, and to see tanks rolling in the streets was a little disconcerting.
So that was not an everyday occurrence to see tanks in North Korea.
It was not in South Korea. It was not.
How long was that? How long did that last?
Oh, it only lasted a few days actually, and they began to not have the heavy equipment out then, which was a good feeling. But Bill and I had the opportunity also to go, and our children, our kids who were actually in high school then, had the opportunity to go up to the DMZ. And so we had already been up to the DMZ and had the opportunity to go into the building where the treaties are signed, the North Koreans on one side and the South Koreans and on the other side of the table. So
it's an interesting time in history to be in that part of the world.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So obviously he had a family while he was in active duty. You all accompanied him, and families serve along with the service members. So can you describe your overall impression of, you've mentioned traveling a lot, but your impression of that service and the support of your soldier?
Well, I, always was willing to, go any place that he felt was a good place to, then he always thought of the family too and moving around. But you don't always have your choice, of course. But there were activities for the wives, the wives club, where you get to know the other wives and in your husband's company or battalion, and they just had activities where, if the wives wanted to participate, that they could. And I just always enjoyed just getting around the towns where we lived and just taking care of the family.
Mm-hmm. So you've mentioned being in South Korea. Were there any other assignments that were especially memorable, and why?
Well, we I think the tour in the States that's especially memorable was our 3 years at West Point, the military academy at West Point, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to spend, various weekends in the city. It was only about a 50-mile drive, or it wasn't very far to the city. So we were able to, take in a lot of the museums and monuments and everything around the city there. And it was just being around the cadets also. We sponsored a cadet, so the kids, our 2 kids, found that just really very interesting for them to come to our home and talk about life and everything at the academy. And we were there at a time when the first females began to be accepted at the academy. So
you've mentioned your children, and obviously they moved around with you. What is your impression of the effect or the impact of that kind of life on your children?
Well, when they were young, it was pretty smooth that they just moved along with us as we moved. But especially, it seemed like in their high school years, it began to be a little more difficult for them to want to move. And I know our daughter, we moved from Korea in December of the year we moved was in December, and she happened to be a senior in high school then, and she didn't really want to move. She tried to talk us into letting her stay with a friend of hers with their family there, and we just didn't feel that was a good idea. She would be too far away. So with just a little, understanding on our part of the way she felt, I think then she began to feel better about moving with us. But it wasn't real easy, but most of the time we could work things out where it was pretty smooth transition.
Mm-hmm.
And
so what sorts of things do you see in their lives now that you think, if they hadn't moved around all the time, this would be different for them?
Okay. Well, I think that actually they didn't know any other life other than moving around. And I know now our son will see something on TV and he'll say, I've been there. And they have a broader, I think, knowledge of the world as a whole and understanding different cultures and so forth. But I just, and my daughter, although she wasn't happy sometimes about moving because she had made, really good friends at one place. And, but it was always easy for them to make friends after we'd moved somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was really I think they realized all in all that it was a good experience, that they have a broader, knowledge and all, and thinking about different places, different countries, and different people.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of your memorable experiences as a family? Was there anything that was particularly humorous or very significant that happened in your life as a military family?
would you repeat the question,
Sure.
please?
So, are there any particularly memorable experiences that you shared as a family? You've mentioned the time in South Korea. Was there anything else that you can recall that was very unusual or a humorous story that, only because of the life we live did we get to encounter this?
Well, I can think of one thing that seemed humorous to us, and maybe, but we were in Mexico when my son was about 6 or 7, and we were out away from the city there on a little hill area, and just got out of the car and walking on the path and looking around and taking pictures as we always did. And all of a sudden, I realized that something was crawling on him, and it was red ants. He had stopped in a red ant bed, and he began to do what was referred to later, and he even referred to it as his red ant dance. And, so it wasn't humorous at the time. Needless to say, we got away from there, and Bill brushed the ants off of his feet. And it wasn't humorous at the time, but later on, he could recall that being in Mexico, that's what he thought about, was he had done the red ant dance in Mexico.
So I've read that he earned the Legion of Merit for his service. Can you tell us about that?
Okay, that I feel is something maybe I should refer to a note, because it is an important medal that he did receive. And Bill's tour of duty at the time that he received the medal, we were in Hawaii, and it was a FAO assignment, Foreign Area Officer assignment, and he served as the branch chief, Northeast Asia, for logistics and security assistance. He received the Legion of Merit for his exceptional performance, which culminated a distinguished career in the service to our country. And he, knowing the language and understanding the people and the culture the way he did, I think it was very just easy for him to work with our allies in security assistance, and so that he always worked well, not only with everyone in his office, but other offices as well as the foreign governments. And in fact, one general had commented and wrote that other offices, that he had to fight to keep Bill in his office, because other offices were trying to pull him away to work for them. And in fact, an assistant to an aide to one of the generals had asked Bill if he would like to be a speechwriter for the general. And Bill politely declined because he really enjoyed the job that he had, and just wanted to stay in his office.
So did he retire after the tour in Hawaii?
He did. He retired with 24 years of service in the military. And
what was next?
Okay, next he had gotten a job with AIT, the American Institute in Taiwan. And so both of us went there, and I worked as doing the same type of work as a Foreign Service Secretary during the 4 years that we were there. And so that was a very rewarding job, and we enjoyed it. We enjoyed being in Taiwan. And when we first went there, their R&Rs were to the Philippines. But usually you'd want to get an R&R, you're supposed to get out of that setting to a different setting. A lot of the people were going back to the States to visit family and so forth. And then, unfortunately, when a service member was killed in the Philippines standing on a street corner near Clark Air Force Base, that they just changed the R&R area to Australia. You could either go to Australia or go back to the States. Well, of course, our choice was going to be we'd never been to Australia. So we took a month's leave and flew to Sydney and rented a car and went over a portion of Australia. It's a big country. You really couldn't cover it in one trip. And we went to Adelaide, the town of Adelaide, and then drove up north to Ayers Rock and Alice Springs, where the first telegraph there was. They have a museum to the first telegraph there. And Bill and I both climbed Ayers Rock and went across it to sign a book that they had at a podium where everyone could sign. And they had a place inside the podium that could keep the book out of the weather. But now, in recent years, one cannot climb Ayers Rock anymore. Mm-hmm. So we were there at a good time because it was quite an experience. So.
Interesting. So he was in Taiwan for 4 years, and then
yes.
Where did he go?
Okay. By the time that we left, he had procured a job with Raytheon. And so we moved to the Northeast. We had bought a home on one of our R&Rs. We had gone back and purchased a home in Nashua, New Hampshire. And then so we returned there. And that's where we lived in the rest. I still live there today. But with Raytheon, he worked in with their Hawk missile system. He was a manager of Hawk missiles. And he traveled just a little bit back overseas, but a lot of his work was organizing the conferences that they had, at various places with Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. Mm-hmm. So I would go with him to either Orlando or Biloxi, Mississippi, or San Diego to these conferences once a year. And that was a nice little, getaway then from just daily, life in New Hampshire.
So how long did he work for Raytheon?
He worked for Raytheon for 15 years and retired the end of December 2005.
So with all the traveling that you've done while in the service, what did you do once he retired?
Well, actually we had our daughter had blessed us with 2 girls, so our granddaughters would come and spend summers with us in New Hampshire. So we always look forward to that. We would drive to Virginia in our van and pick them up, and they had memorized the different states. I think they told me once that we'd go through 7 different states to get to New Hampshire mm-hmm. from Northern Virginia. And they look forward to that. We take them fishing and in a little lake there and just various things. And they attended space camp for 2 years in Concord at the planetarium in Concord, New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. So it was just a good time. But so that pretty much took care of our summers. Actually, in July of 2010, Bill and I celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. So we took all of our family members on a cruise, a Disney cruise, out of Cape Canaveral, Florida. And that was actually the first cruise that we had ever taken, and to celebrate with our family. It was also Bill's 70th birthday.
Very nice. So can you tell us a little about his induction into the Hall of Honor?
Well, we had gone, many years ago. We occasionally we would be in the area and would come back to Arlington to the college, and always go to the ROTC department. And when he learned that they had a Hall of Honor, one of the men showed us took us and showed us the Hall of Honor at that time, which was very small. And, it was very nice. And I felt that really Bill deserved to be there also. And he just didn't feel like he measured up. I don't know why, but he just always felt like that they had done, better or with their careers or something like that. But I just felt that he belonged there. But we had gotten so busy, with our lives and projects that he called retirement projects. So that just kind of was in the, pushed to the back burner, as you'd say. And then when he became ill with cancer, he was diagnosed in December of 2010 and passed away in March, the 11th of March, 2011. I knew then that I should carry through and send in his nomination for the Hall of Honor. So I had help from a good friend who lived in Virginia at the time, but he and Bill met when they were both stationed at MIT in the ROTC department back in the early 80s. So we were good friends with his family, and he helped me get everything organized for it, and it was really fairly easy for me once I sat down to do it to get everything ready, because Bill had all of his military papers in one file cabinet and all of his civilian papers in another, and he was always known for being very well organized. So it made it easy then for me not only to do this nomination for him, but for other things in my life. It's made it really easy for me.
So how long did the process take?
I had submitted his nomination before the end of August of 2011, and I was notified fairly quickly because the board had met, that the individuals had met that would make the selection. I was notified that he was accepted his nomination was accepted, and that the Hall of Honor would be held on the 11th of February 2012. So all of my family came for that.
Very nice. So is there anything that you would like to contribute or tell us about that I didn't ask you?
Well, I just feel that Bill was just a great person and a great husband and father, and he contributed a lot. He was always helping friends and neighbors, and I know our friend in Virginia remarked that he couldn't go into a room in his home that there wasn't something that Bill had repaired or built, or all the way from pull downstairs to a whole house attic to a workbench in his garage to shelves and just the whole works. He would help everybody. We could go like to my sister's home back in Texas and realize that her toilet tank, the guts in it were not working properly. And before we left, he had that all repaired and replaced. So, yeah, she said, and at my daughter's house in Virginia, sometimes she might have a plumbing problem, and she would call us ahead of time so that Bill would know what kind of tools to take with him. And so she always looked forward to us coming, whether she needed anything done or not. And but anyway, he was just well known for helping, and our neighbors in Nashua. I know one neighbor, her husband had Alzheimer's, and if he got the TV controls in his hands, that he would hit something that would mess up the TV for them, the picture, and she knew she could call Bill and he could come over and get it straight.
So it has been a pleasure talking with you today, and I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us. You were very helpful and informative, and I thank you for your service and for your support of your husband's military service and for your contribution to this project.
Well, thank you very much for having me, asking me to come. I never tire of talking about my husband and our life together.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.